Hello. Oh, let's stop that. How can I set that to not move so much? I don't know. I can do that, and then maybe that's better. Well, I don't know. Why am I all the way down here? It's moved, hasn't it? Sorry. I didn't touch it, but somehow it's moved. Hi. Hi, everybody. Everybody is no one. Oh well. We will just carry on as normal. I guess everybody's actually off and having a break. Maybe that's a good thing. So maybe you'll just see this later, or you'll never see it, and so it doesn't matter what I do. No. What am I gonna talk about? Well, it's been a bit of a crazy few weeks. What else is going? I can actually talk about. Well, the Laravel stuff is going okay. I'm happy with that. I'm excited about the progress I'm making. And yeah, I've been working on it this morning a little bit, and I kind of want to carry on with that, to be honest. But I said that the stream would be spread, so I think that's what I'll stick to, because maybe that's what people will want to watch for. But I mean, if you are watching now and you want to go into Laravel territory, we can do that. But otherwise, if I don't hear anything from anybody, I'm going to assume that I can carry on with what we had planned. So we can talk about what we had planned. The last stream that I did was a very, very quick one a few weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I think it was. And what did we do? We set up a test. We put a featured test in kind of the wrong place, and proved how we can use Saloon to kind of mock some of the... Well, we didn't really mock it. We just made sure that we didn't send a real request out to the API that we were integrating with. So, but we didn't get as far as actually mocking any of the responses. So we could extend that a little bit. That would be a good thing to do, as we've got a little bit more time. The challenge for me now is deciding what the kind of next priority is, and working out how much time and effort it's going to take to build whatever that next thing is. And because it's now quiet season, everybody's kind of going away and thinking about spending time away from work and things, which is all good. I feel like I'm not going to get a lot of feedback about the product and usage and people trialing it and wanting to trial it. So I feel like mostly that's going to come back in maybe 2 or 3 weeks' time. So yeah, it's a bit of tricky, like, what do we do in this time when we can't get that kind of useful input and that feeling of like momentum and such. So there's a bunch of things that I think are going to be critical for the product, but they're not, nobody's sort of pressing for them, so I don't really see much point in tackling those. What else? Hey, there's a person. I can't... Who is this? Laravel Online. Sorry, I can't remember the connection to a face and a name. Laravel Online is you. Don't know. Okay. Well, it looks like you might be the only one. It's Shane. Of course it's Shane. Sorry, Shane. It's been a while. How's it going? What have you been up to? Anything fun? I feel like I haven't seen you around very much. I feel like maybe Twitter has put you in a black hole for me. Hello, Gebruikersnaam 999999. Welcome. Yeah, if you've got time later to watch back, hopefully the recording will be suitable. So don't feel like you've got to stick around. I'm sorry to hear that you're going through something. I hope it's manageable, Shane. We've been through some personal things as well the last few weeks. It's been really tough. That's partly why I didn't do a stream last week. And yeah, I feel it, bro. I know what it's like. Yeah, please do. If you need to chat privately, we can do that, obviously. Yes, and looking for work. Yeah, I've had to pause on a few things myself just because of what's going on, and I mean it's given me a bit more time to focus on the things that I'm enjoying doing right now. But yeah, it's not the greatest set of circumstances to be in. Well, there you go. So we'll try and keep it light and positive for the stream, and yeah, see if we can get something productive done. If you can stick around for that, Shane, that would be cool. I might need your help. But yeah. What else? I think the things that have been interesting that have happened over the last couple of weeks that in the sort of Laravel space that I kind of would have wanted to talk about. Probably the most exciting one is Pulse and the stuff around that. I'm not going to cover it because there's plenty of people covering it. I am keen to see what Aaron Francis is doing with what was it, built with Pulse or something like that, built with Pulse or built on Pulse. Yeah, I can't remember. And then try out some of those other things. Like, it's just cool to toy around with some of that tech and whatever. We'll see. Yeah, sorry that your kid is sick. I hope he gets better. So yeah, it's fine if you have to disappear. Thanks for coming and saying hi. And yeah, reverb, that, I don't know what that could be. That sounds really interesting. Yeah, Pulse is very promising. Hi Essa, nice to have you with us again. It feels like it's taking a bit of a downer, the stream, honestly, right now. We've had some not great positive vibes starting. Hi Josh. I'm definitely in a bit of a downer. It's been a tricky couple of weeks. It's a slow day. I'm struggling to... I can see all these little icons floating up, thanks. Kind kind of struggling just to get the vibe right, and I kind of don't really want to be in front of the computer, if I'm honest, right now. I do and I don't. I need to, but I don't want to, and then I feel really guilty for doing it. So yeah, that's tricky. Oh well. So anyway, let's get on with something practical and kind of take our mind off all the stuff that's going on in real life. Let's see. Where were we? I'm going to just jump to where's my window? This one. And then turn this thing back on so that you can actually see my face. Maybe. Yeah. I have terrible hair today. I'm getting a haircut, I promise, next week. So anyway, the last time we were doing this, we basically set up this fake on Saloon so that we didn't hit this API endpoint in real life. And then we didn't get to the point where we could mock the response, and that would be useful to be able to test some of the different outcomes that my code will make based on what comes back from that API. The reality is that I actually don't have there's not that much stuff that we can do with the responses, and there's not that much stuff that I know about the responses in terms of what's different. So really, at this point in time, what I think is probably the most sensible is to just set up like, this is what I know they look like right now, and then just use that as the kind of foothold to test my code that sort of sits off the back of that, and to make sure that it's doing what I'm expecting it to do in the one set of circumstances that I'm aware about. So we can have a look at what those responses look like, and we'll have to have a look at the Saloon docs and see how we actually do that. So I'll just get that up. We'll try and put this together. I don't expect it will be too long today, honestly. There's not an awful lot that I've got in mind to get done, so let's see. Testing. That's cool, actually. Just before we go into this, recording responses. Maybe this is what we should try and do. Wouldn't that be fun to see how this works? Yeah, maybe we don't need it because we're not getting lots of data. But it would still be interesting to see what this does. So yeah, okay. This feature will allow you to make a real request and store the response in a file for later. This is common practice. Yep. Saloon makes it effortless. Request recording starts with a mock client. We've got one of those. And that can be applied directly to a connector instance to use across all requests or on a per request basis. Okay, fine. So using Laravel, if you are using Laravel, you don't have to use that. Yeah, we already know that bit. So we can just pass this fixture method call. That's what it's saying. So it's kind of like wrapping it in the, here, let's do that. I don't know, payments, create, I think. So I'm making some assumptions here, right? I'm not reading all of the docs thoroughly. I'm just going, this looks like it makes sense, and I'm going to try it and see what happens, and then figure it out from there, because that's kind of how I work. But what I'm assuming is that this mock response class and this with this fixture method is basically going to allow the fake to actually send the request, and it's going to capture the response and store it in a file, and this looks like dot notation view paths, just calls it a name, so who knows, but it doesn't say obviously here what that means, but I'm guessing it's going to put it in like folder and file structure somewhere, and then maybe it checks for the fixture, and then in subsequent requests it does fake it and doesn't send an actual request. Don't know. Let's see if there is a bit more in the docs. So then we'll check if the fixture already exists, and if it doesn't, it will make the real API request. I mean, it just makes a load of sense, doesn't it? That's cool. So we can use it without kind of changing the code in the test itself. We can just keep this code the same. It's going to change its behavior based on what it understands of its universe, which is great. Yeah, so the dot notation thing does make me think this is something to do with folders and files, just because of this namespacing piece. And then there's, okay, redacting, that's useful. I don't know if we're going to need that at the moment, but that could be, yeah, really handy. Nice, nice, nice. Preventing stray requests. Okay, so that's kind of like, at some point you kind of know this is the range of endpoints that my tests, my code should be calling. So I don't want you to go and automatically create the mock response fixture for me from those requests. So I don't want you to go and make new requests without me kind of knowing about it. That's a bit of a tricky one, I guess, in the whole grand scheme of things, because you are still changing the code to make it behave slightly differently. I don't see how you could really get around that. The test suite has got to know, like, is this the line in the sand where we stop doing this kind of fixture creation. Where are we? So let's see what happens when we run this, because this is going to make this API call for us in this pay endpoint that we've created. We can have a look at what this does. Remember, just to remind ourselves where this goes. So we have this create payment request, which is the Saloon request, and then it makes the request through the Trello connector. So that's what makes the API call here. And then we deal with the response. We put it through a DTO and some other stuff. So let's see if, let's just run this. The test still works, but what's happened now? Has it put something somewhere in the tests folder? Yeah, oh, okay. Interesting. So it's created this Saloon folder and this payments.create.json. So it just followed the naming path that I've given it. It hasn't used special dots for folders or anything like that. That's okay. At least they're going to be somewhat organized. And then here we've got, how do I format this? Reformat. Fine. Okay, so this is the response that's come back from that request, which is the weird and wonderful GraphQL. Oh no, sorry, this isn't. This is more than that, isn't it? This is a JSON representation of the whole response. So it's not the response itself. This is what the whole HTTP packet looked like. So we've got the headers, and then we've got the data, and the actual response data that we probably mostly care about is this stuff. So this has gone and actually hit the API, and it's given me a fixture back. Super lovely, great. That's perfect. And then the next time I run it, that's much quicker, and presumably it hasn't hit the API. I mean, I don't have any real way to check that it has or hasn't, except that this is probably still the same, and we could verify some of that, right? So let's do, in the payment controller, we just do, we'll get the payment ID back. I think we can do that. Do I have an ID on it? Yeah, must do. It's the Trello. I think I called it Trello payment ID, but I can't remember. Let's have a look. Payments, columns, Trello payment ID. So that should be set, and it should always be the same. In fact, I'm not going to DD, I'm going to dump and let it carry on. So we should still see the test pass, but we should get a bit of dump. And then, so this should stay the same, this 85BC, blah, blah, blah. Every time. Cool. And then if we just confirm it, if we delete this file, I'll delete this from here. Oh, this will be interesting. Let's see what it does when I've got an empty file. Okay, funky. Let's get rid of that, and then let's do it properly. Okay, so now it's got a new one, and it's 572 BBB, blah, blah, blah. And we're just 572 BBB. Yeah, that's the ID coming back from the response. And then if we hit this again, you can see it's 1.7 seconds, so it's definitely gone and called an API, and then this time it's well under 1 second. And it's the same. This is really good. Right, sorry, I can see the chat's kind of going. So, hey Sam. Ah, no way. Oh, I'll say good things. Thanks for coming in. Good suggestion, Josh, about the timestamp. But yeah, I think this has kind of proved it. So that is really cool. That's good work, Sam. Thank you very much. I love that. And so now I've got a fixture that I can rely on. I don't need to worry about trying to come up with the actual mock response format myself. And what's really good about that, which I think is super cool, is if the response changes, I don't need to go and update my own tests, my fixtures. All I need to do is go, I think this has changed. I'm going to delete this file, and it's going to run it again. It's going to get the latest version, and then my tests are updating. And I guess that's going to happen as long as we don't have this prevent stray requests. We were talking about this before you appeared, Sam. Well, say we, I was talking about it, sorry. This kind of point in time where you've got to say, okay, these are all of the things that I want fixtures for, and I'm going to draw a line in the sand now, and I don't want any other requests to kind of go and make real requests and create fixtures for me anymore. So you add this prevent stray requests. Presumably you need to remember to pull that out when you do need it to go and make a request again that you've already had before but you've removed because it's updating. That's kind of not a very well phrased question, but it's an open question to you. If you've got this in place, do you need to remove it if you need to update pre-existing fixtures? And I shall await your answer. Yeah, cool. That makes sense. So it's just that little bit of trickiness that you've got around, like I've got to change the code in my test in some circumstances in order to get the behavior that I want, which is fine because we're probably doing that a lot anyway in other situations. I wonder if there's a way around that. Basically, if you had a manifest of, well, these are the ones that I want you to go and check, and then anything outside of that I don't want you to go and check, that's kind of explicit rather than implicit based on the files that are stored in that fixtures folder. The other thing which you might have missed was this bit around the payment dot, which in the, well, I say payment, what am I talking about? The bit around the payments dot, the name of the fixture. I think in the docs you suggested in the Laravel section with a dot, and if you're coming from a Laravel world, like I am mostly, then this dot kind of suggests that it's going to be put in a folder, a subfolder, like it's going to create a servers folder and it's going to put an index file in there. But then in practice, it actually just puts it as the file name, which is fine. It's just expectations were different. I don't know if that needs to change. I don't think it does. Just maybe something in here that says this is what the file is going to look like. And I know I can update the docs. So you just tell me if that's what you want me to do and I'll get that done. Yeah, maybe we should work on that together when I've done a bit more of this as well. Anyway, let's move on. We've got our fixture, which is really cool and it works really well. And now this is using some sensible data, which means I can somewhat reliably now test other parts of the flow. So I can say, I want it to have created the DTO or that it's moved that into the payment model. And that gets saved and these kinds of things. So what do we want to do here? I think probably the most important thing from my point of view is to know that we've created the model. How do I do that? Test. Assertions, expectations. Maybe just like the was recently created on the model or something. Well, actually, let's think about it properly. What's going on here? I'm making this request to my application, which is making the further request to this API. I then I then kind of need to check the response of this request. If that's the way that I'm approaching this, is I'm kind of doing it as a full-on integration test. So I want to see what this response looks like. It should be JSON. Yeah. JSON response. Which means I can run the Laravel assertions on JSON responses, right? So this is the stuff that's coming out of the fixture, isn't it? Now. It's the stuff that's coming out of the fixture, but it's gone through my model and into the test database and wherever else. So kind of this, it's making some assumptions to jump that far ahead, but they're fair enough assumptions. Like for now, I can just say response assert okay. And assert has, oh no, assert JSON, don't know. So this is sort of like the response that I send back needs some thought anyway. So this might be the point where this changes, because I realized the other day that I'm not actually sending back anything that will help the whatever client, you know, the person who's integrating their application with this service, to know about what the payment record is on my side. So how are they going to refer to the correct thing if they need to interrogate it again in the future? Because all I send back to them at the moment, I think I've updated that in between times. What I was sending to them was this QR code and a URL, and that's kind of no good. And I want to change those as well, so we'll come on to that in a minute. But I've added the reference. Maybe we did do that on stream, I can't remember. So I actually returned the UUID that I generate. Now the question is, do I actually generate it? Because I think I might just have put that in, what's the word, hopefully, and I don't actually have that anywhere. Yeah, that's not, oh no, it's at the end. Why did I just not have that? Have I just been really blind and not seen it, or did it just appear? Anyway, so I am generating it somewhere. Let's have a look in the model. Must be doing it. Okay, that's interesting. It's being set outside. Maybe. That's the wrong one, sorry. Data pending. Yeah. I can't remember. I feel like we went through this exercise on stream, but somehow I've ended up with we're using a UUID 7. So it's sortable. That's okay. I'm happy enough with that. So what I can do on the back of that is just say, I expect the JSON, let's just do fragment, because the other things could be super variable. And we'll get rid of that. Now, it's going to generate a UUID every time for this. So it's going to be different every time. How do I How do I check that? Maybe it's not a fragment. Maybe it's something else. Wait, let's see. What does Laravel testing JSON structure? Oh, if there's a valid thing, that would be a good one. Check the response of valid UUID. Yeah, that's okay. I think I like that. Yeah, let's just go with that. So rather than that, if we just get the JSON, we should be able to get a UUID. No, it wasn't UUID, was it? What did I call it? It's there. That's the wrong one. Sorry, it's here. Reference. So assert that string is UUID. Expect to be. There isn't like a to be UUID thing here, is there? Not yet. That's a PR to. Oh no, there is one. It's hiding there. That's cool. Okay, maybe I don't need that. What's happening in this chat? I would test the response structure too. Yeah, I agree with that. So this feels weird, having these sort of mixed assertions here. Like, I don't know if Pest has got any way to consolidate any of that. But I'm going to move the expect one to the end at the moment, just because this one feels like it might expand and the visual separation could be useful. So let's just run this and see if this passes. No. Oh, right, okay, yeah, it's not okay. It's created. Fine. It's correct. Okay, cool. So it's proved that that's a UUID. And if I do something silly, like removing this, then it fails. Cool. So there's like the one bit of the structure that we've proven just by having that test. And then we could say, no, let's not do it that way. Let's do that here. So JSON structure, and yeah, that is the structure, right? QR code URL reference for now. And then we can say, like, if we need to change that in the future, we come and write the test, just update this, say we expect something else. Ta-da, nice. That's exceptionally powerful, like how quick we've been able to do all of that stuff. You know, and I have to say, I'm not super familiar with doing testing, which is silly because I've been doing this for a really long time. I just always feel a little bit uncomfortable. Like I feel like I don't really know what I'm trying to tackle sometimes when I'm writing tests. But the whole, what is it? I think the whole setup of something like Pest, for example, just kind of forces all of the bump. I don't know, there's a better word for that. All the clobber around the test classes and all these special annotations and things to just disappear, and I can just focus on the code that I'm actually trying to test. I feel like there's something about the way that pests and other kind of functional testing frameworks approach the problem that just makes them kind of get out of the way, which makes this a little bit easier. So this is good. This is kind of like I don't know what the word is. This is like a good baseline test for this whole payment endpoint that I've created, because we're testing the full chain from like the request being made, which is this part, into my application, and then the on-bound request that makes to the Trello API, which is handled by Saloon. We're proving that gets at least sent at the moment, and then we're asserting that the response that comes back from my application contains the things that we expected to have in the happy path that this has worked. So and that's using the fixture that we've created and everything to get there, which is really, really cool. We could probably do with a few more things in here, but I don't know, like off the top of my head, some of those aren't super obvious. And they might come out really as we just progress and bump into more cases of what happens when things go wrong. So anyway, this is like one of the main goals I've had for a while, is to get this kind of test written, because it is such a critical piece of the whole application to be able to create, to be able to know reliably that the payment record is created in the API that we're using, but to trust that we're handling that properly on our side. So that's really, really good. In fact, it's so good. I think what I'm going to do is we're going to wrap it up. I don't know why I needed that. I don't think I need that anymore, because I think I've set this somewhere in... no, it comes from the database. That's the problem. So that's kind of interesting, actually. Why did we not sort that out? This is variable. So this needs to be like this. I think this is going to make our test fail now. Yeah. And that's precisely because of that missing ID. And this is because I'm not using a factory yet. So we're not done. Why am I not using a factory which lets me set that? Maybe I haven't created it. So team and the team factory. Okay, so it's the Trello ID or merchant ID or something like that. Trello merchant ID. This is, I don't need all of that. That's what I need. And now, which one was it? It was here, yes. So this without that hard-coded ID, this should work again. And in fact, I don't really want to hard code this value here. I probably want it in an env or something like that. Like this is akin to hitting the stripe API, this is like a production key, not key, but ID. I would want, there'd have to be like env for this test that would set this, or for this factory that we would use, which would allow us to swap this out for a value that hit like their, what do you call it, sandbox, Trello sandbox, rather than their production system. So this would need to move out of here eventually, but it doesn't matter. They don't have a sandbox, and this is the only way that we can do this right now. Or if they do have a sandbox, they haven't given me access to it. So that's fine. We can put that there, and that means that still works, and the application's still going to work nicely. And then the other thing, I guess, is something I touched on last time, which was that this test, we're not really testing the Trello SDK here. I created this file because I felt like it was going to go and do something different, or we were going to approach it in a slightly different way, and maybe eventually we do, and it makes sense. But actually, I think because of the way that Saloon has just kind of wrapped up a lot of the stuff that we were trying to do, or thinking about trying to do, and just made it really approachable, I don't need to do as much here as I thought I was going to do, and it's made this test feel like it should sit in the payment class, payment test file, which is all of these things as well. Well, it'll grab those, won't it? Because PHP still is sometimes smart. So I'm just going to get rid of this because I don't think I need it. I feel like it's better here as part of the pre-existing test file. It didn't do all of the little shortcuts. That's very annoying. Let's grab those are the ones that it's missing. Mock and team and create payment. Basically, the important ones. Fine, and cool. And let's just make sure that that works still. Oh, it's just being slow. Fine, and then if I run this whole file, you should see all of these tests run out. Excellent. Okay. Test the payment endpoint, keeping it simple. I'm going to delete this file. And then we've got this fixture. There's nothing that I'm really worried about here in terms of, there's that stuff in the docs, which I think is really good, about redacting stuff. I don't think we need to worry about redacting anything here. There's nothing particularly sensitive. Certainly from my point of view at the moment. I don't know about some of these IDs and Amazon response data that has been added, but there's nothing in the actual payload from Trello that's kind of sensitive. So I'm happy to just put that in there, and we can just go get that out, done. Nice. That that's a successful chunk of work again, around Saloon. So that's 2 streams in a row where we've been able to kind of jump into something on Saloon and get it done, and it hasn't been painful, and we haven't had to think too hard about it because it's been well built and it's got good documentation. Top marks, Sam. This is the kind of stuff that we need. And then obviously the same goes for Pest and Laravel and all of those things. Like, it's just they're super approachable and accessible, which, yeah, it's good. I love working on things that are easy. Is that a middle finger, or I'm going to take that as a thumbs up. So what else can we do now? Should we do anything else? I don't know. How long have we been going? I can't even see the numbers. What is this? Coming up to an hour, I think, or just under. Slight change of pace for a second. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I was kind of talking about the problem that I have of prioritizing what to do next. I was talking about this at the beginning, and thinking like, there's so many different things that I feel I could do on both this and Laravel and a bunch of other projects, and I find it really difficult to prioritize those things based purely on my own thoughts. And 1 second. Okay. I am. I said this person I was talking to yesterday. I said, like, prioritizing what to do next is really, really tricky when you're kind of in the vacuum and you don't have loads of feedback because maybe the thing that you're working on isn't out there yet, or there's no easy way to get it out there yet, or there's not a lot of people super interested in it and giving you feedback, which maybe is signals of their own. But even something like Laravel, where I feel like there is quite a lot of interest in it already, and people invested somewhat in using it to their own benefit. They're not forthcoming with like feedback, and when you put ideas out there, they're not kind of replying to your tweets or your emails, and and I'm doing all of those things, so it's kind of tricky then when you're sort of suggesting things and everybody's just kind of ambivalent towards what it is that you're putting out there. But the response that I kind of got from this person was to almost be really direct, rather than putting something out in front of people and waiting for their response. Actually just go and ask them what they want to see. And I thought, wow, obviously that I should do that as well. I don't really, I think the challenge that I have with that is, I don't think people always really know what they want. So asking them sort of open-ended, they're going to go, oh, I don't know, what do you think? And then you end up back at square one. So open-ended is kind of hard. And 2, when it's not open-ended, so if you give them choices, I think you end up actually just narrowing their imagination. So you're limiting where their mind goes in terms of thinking about things, because a lot of people actually do find it quite hard to think outside the proverbial box, especially the one that you've literally just created and presented to them. So I certainly find that difficult. So how can you solicit that kind of information from people without it sort of limiting them? And well, I think the answer is you can't. I think you have to either go, I'm going to just, I'm going to do the Steve Jobs thing. I'm going to just make the thing that I want to make, and I'm just going to convince people, like through the sheer will and kind of, my gleaming personality, which I clearly don't have. But that's one way, which some people like Steve Jobs have done very successfully. And the other way is that you do just present them with a limited set of options, and you're just prepared to realise that even after you get all of that input from people, you still might end up building something completely different that nobody mentioned or said anything about. So actually the thing that it's led me to is I should do it anyway, and I shouldn't be afraid of kind of shoehorning people's ideas into one shape. And it'd be more about the fact of engaging with the process of showing some interest in the product. So it's not even specifically that then a bunch of people have kind of voted on a poll or upvoted a thing, in some platform to say, this is the thing that I want you to work on, and so therefore I must work on that thing. It's more general that they've shown some care about whatever it is that I'm working on, which so I did this. I put a tweet out about what I should build next on Laravel, for example, and I presented a few options, and it hasn't gone crazy. There's not been like thousands of votes. I don't ever expect that, but there's been a moderate sort of response to that, and that's quite good. Like, it's making me feel people actually do care about what I do on the product. And one of the things that, the one that's kind of coming out to the top is the one that I'm working on anyway. It's the one thing that I kind of thought, this makes sense. Like, it makes sense to me if I was in the position of being a developer using that platform. This is the kind of thing that I'd want it to do for me. So it's maybe the obvious choice. And so maybe the poll votes don't really count for anything because I knew the answer already, or because my own thoughts on it represent the audience that I've got quite well. The data is subject to all sorts of bias it's not a scientific test. So anyway, that's all got me to this point of I still can't really prioritize what to do. And I'm talking about one product and I'm working on a different one right now. So the other thing is that this product is in it's a very different space. And I feel like the audience that I've got aren't as in touch with it. Like for example, this one's focused, you have to be in the UK to really make the most of it. You have to have a UK bank account. And want to integrate with the service that I'm building to try and take payments in a way, in a new way, which could be risky. It might not do enough of what you need it to do. There's a whole load of reasons why you would rule it out straight away. So it's quite tricky when you can then only really afford to do development of one thing at a time, because you actually need to do like 100 things all at once and have them all come together. And I mean, I'm saying that's hyperbole. It's probably not that many, but and then you're also trying to get the message out there and get people excited about it, and at a time of year when everybody's kind of winding down and thinking about just going to sleep for 2 weeks. Anyway. So the place that I'm at now, because I kind of feel like I'm really confident with what we've built, what we're testing, I can change it. It can change outside of my control, and I can kind of spot those things and account for them, and all of this lovely stuff. This is stable, I could just move away from building features to actually just trying to get more and more people to use it. But I think I'm going to have to, we were talking about that at the beginning, I think I'm going to have to leave that until after the break, basically, because I think everybody's going to be like, why should we deal with that now? That's just going to be more work, and I don't want to, I don't want to think about work anymore, which is fine. So it's kind of leading me to this place of, right now, I think I'm going to pause on this project, like completely, until we get into some reasonable time in January, maybe even later, because people maybe just aren't going to be in the right frame of mind for it. And it will give me a chance to kind of stew over what actually is the thing that I want to do next. So this whole thing about priority is also, for me, I'm trying to mix it in with, like, what am I going to be excited to work on? Because if I'm excited to work on it, then I'm going to be faster, hopefully. I'm going to be enthused to do a good job, and it's going to be fun. Well, I don't know. At the moment is the answer. I don't know what I'm excited about. Like, I don't have great design skills. Let's have a look at this. I haven't refined the copy in any way. Like, there's stuff in here that doesn't make sense. There's probably things that don't work. I think I set this to create a... This is going to crash. Yeah. So I need to sort that out, which is I'm trying to actually get people to sign up and pay as the test of whether they actually want the product. But I think the fundamental thing there is that this doesn't present that well enough yet. I think it's okay if you like reading, but it needs to be a bit more visual, it needs to be a bit more punchy, and, clearer demonstration of the value that you get much more quickly than this currently does. Which is hard because it's a complex product, right? Even though the implementation is really easy. It's a complex system to convey to people. Anyway, I would love to use Trello instead of Stripe. Yeah, do you know, I think Stripe will just go, we should be doing this bank-to-bank thing everywhere. Well, we're just going to do it. We're going to make it happen. And that will blow this kind of product out of the water in terms of adoption, because then you've got both card and bank-to-bank payments going on in the same place, maybe with some reasonable APIs and obviously the support of a highly profitable, I think, presumably, Stripe is a highly profitable organisation. But until they do that, I feel like there's opportunity. I think that there are niches that they're not going to be able to go after because it's not going to be worth it to them. Like, they want to provide the rails, they want to provide the infrastructure for this kind of thing. They're not going to go and build a specific product to serve a specific niche that uses this technology under the hood. And that, that's kind of the difference. It's like, I'm trying to go after potentially a specific niche. Yeah, why is it UK only? So the reason is because Trello, the payment provider that I'm using, is UK only, and the reason that they're UK only is because they're a small startup. They're like there's 3-4 people on their team or something like that, and they haven't got the resources yet to kind of expand it further. The other problem is that my understanding at least is that open banking as a kind of umbrella of technologies really only exists within the EU and the UK, where the legislation has kind of forced the banks into providing all of that stuff. And, it's been put under this nice brand of open banking. But it's really just pushing the consumer banks primarily to provide reasonably well-built data access tools, APIs, and then payments and other things to be exposed as well via it. So I don't know about the adoption rates in the other side of the planet. I know like the US, for example, is going to be really tricky because they'd have to there's like a years long journey that they've got to get some sort of federal legislation in place to say, right, all of the banks in all of the states have got to abide by these standards, which they've just, I think, notoriously been really unable to do, or struggled for a really long time. So I think what's happening there in the States particularly is the banks are just doing it because they're seeing consumer demand, not just consumers, but they're seeing demand rise for the ability to kind of speak to your bank programmatically, which makes sense. Like as more and more people have the tools available for other systems, they're just going, why can't we do this with our bank? So it's like the obvious next step, but then because there's no, at least to my knowledge in the US, there's no kind of unified approach to it, then all the banks are behaving differently. And so then you've got providers like Plaid, which you might have heard of. Plaid. Let's have a look. And one of the things that they do really well, supposedly, is kind of smooth over all of the cracks between all of these different APIs and approaches that the different banks are using. And then it's really just about like those integrators, those platforms like Plaid. What's their strategy in terms of expanding what they're doing across the world? And I don't know if they cover New Zealand or anything yet. And then how accessible do they make that to businesses like what I'm trying to set up with Spread, like Josh, what you're running, and the answer is they don't make it very accessible. They make it quite hard for people to get into it at the moment. Especially if you're trying to do complex things like what we're talking about here, taking payments on behalf of somebody else and kind of facilitating payments between two other third parties. It's like they're worried, obviously, but there's concerns and risks involved in kind of who gets to see what data and what do the banks think about the risk involved, what do the governments and the insurance companies all think about the levels of risk that are here. It's just completely new and unassessed, and I think some countries will just be waiting for the likes of the US to kind of do it first, figure out all the problems, figure out the mess, and then we'll just kind of implement it the right way later on when it's all figured out. What's my personal motivation to build Spread? Because it doesn't seem like anybody's doing it, and it feels like a really obvious thing to be able to do. I can go into my online banking app right now. I can make a payment to someone's account. In the UK, if it's a UK account, I can go and make a payment to a UK account, and it'll be free. They'll get 100% of the money. It won't have cost me a penny, and it will get there in a few seconds or a few minutes. It will be, it's that good. It goes straight into their bank account. They don't pay any fees unless they've got an account that charges them fees to receive money. So, and even then, it'll be like a fixed amount, a very small fixed amount. So a few pence for receiving a payment. That's it. And as I was saying before, the natural kind of next step is, well, people would want programmatic access to that, right? So that I can tell this system to speak to my bank on my behalf and do this payment for me. Then I don't have to type in these numbers and whatever manually. I can, accept that the machine is going to do that a much better. It's going to do a much better job of it. So as long as there's plenty of controls around what the machine can do, how often it can do that, how, thresholds around how much it can take from my account, who it can send to, and those kinds of things, which is all in place, then I should be comfortable letting that kind of thing happen. And then nobody's really pushing to make it happen. So I'm like, I just don't understand why. I think it's the fundamental reason for me, wanting to do this is, well, why not? Do I have customers who've expressed a demand? No. The whole idea began through, for me, kind of started in the company that I was working for before the end of last year, expressing some interest in the possibility of taking payments, like it's an e-commerce business, and taking payments through e-commerce bank to bank for at least some of the UK and EU based customers, which would represent quite a significant, so we're talking a £100 million business. That would represent quite a significant saving on fees that are just currently being frittered away to Stripe, to the tune of tens of thousands of pounds, which when you're a hardware startup and you're cash strapped and you're trying to do all of these things, every penny counts. And I just think that's a good representative of all of a lot of businesses around the world, but in the UK, trying to take payments as easily as possible, but then they're paying kind of a bit of a premium to do so. Stripe's been good, but even their rates are going up, and they don't control things like the rates that Visa or MasterCard set for handling card authorizations and failures and all of that kind of stuff. And so they just have to pass some of those things on. And it just means that the businesses feel the pinch when things don't go right, or even when they do go right, just the course of time, the costs are going up, and then they're not able to pass that on to their customers for whatever reasons. So it pinches. And as I put the word out there about this kind of thing, I have had more people come and express interest. I've had a few people sign up and try it out and make payments. And I think the thing at the moment is that it's not like somebody's gone, wow, we've got to tell everybody and we're going to get this done. And it's just again, I think some of the messaging that I've got in place could improve that story a little bit more. It could be that actually there's a really simple and clear message that I could get across, akin to what Stripe did maybe a decade ago, whenever it was, that they kind of released this version of their website that was like, this is the core thing here. You can kind of call this API endpoint and you can take money. And I think that's kind of what I need to do to show people that this is really easy, and then they'll go, I get it, and then they'll sign up, and then they'll start taking payments and trying it out and integrating it and all of those things. So I think the demand is one of those things in this case where it's obvious, but it's obvious that it should be done, but people just go, maybe it can't be done, or maybe there's reasons, and they don't look into it anymore, and they just kind of brush it aside and go, well, it's okay, we've got card and that works quite well. So there's that, so it's an education piece, and then maybe when people have figured out that this does work and it works better and it's cheaper, then they'll go, why didn't we do this sooner? I hope that's what will happen anyway. Yeah, and if it comes out in New Zealand, I'll let you know. I'm sure there's somebody working on something like that down there or up there, depending on which way around you look at things. So I totally agree with you, Josh. This is what this is about. We have to spread this message. Like, I need help from people who know how to put that across in much simpler terms. Like, I could do it, but it takes me time, and that's time taken away from other things. And you know, I'm faffing around with something like Canva or Figma to make things look okay, and like it just takes me ages. And I don't have the resources to be able to go to somebody and go, hey, like go and spend a week figuring this out and making it look pretty, and you know, make all the copy great and whatever. That's just not like it's gonna be that incremental. Like I'm gonna get a little bit of time to focus on that activity, and it's gonna get a bit better, and that might attract a few more people. We'll see. Polly, sunset, customer had to enter their login details every time. Oh yeah, that's kind of what happens in some of the US banks. Like it's kind of an OAuth flow, and the user is like signing into their online banking and having to approve, and it's just like the banks are all just a bit naff at doing that stuff because they're not technology companies really. They don't want to spend lots of money improving their tech, which is why the legislation was needed in the UK to kind of force the banks to do it. Anyway. Yeah, and the same is true of this. It's still just for one-off payments. It's not really for subscriptions. So if you wanted to do it for subscriptions, I kind of recommend it for like the longer term payments. Like if you're doing an annual plan, it's obviously going to be a much bigger amount of money as well. So like if you've got say a monthly plan, and let's say it's $50 a month, and then you've got this $600 a year or thereabouts, $500 a year plan for an annual payment, then you don't want to be paying the 2 to 3% in card fees on that $600. You don't mind, it's the same obviously, but you don't mind it when it's $50. And I think this is also why monthly subscription payments are kind of popular at the moment, because card companies love that. They're getting these small amounts, lots and lots of them every month. And you don't notice it as a business really as much until it grows to be massive. Like you've just got massive volume, but then you can't really do anything about it because now everybody's used to paying monthly and the convenience of card, blah, blah, blah. But if you could get into people's kind of psyche, if you can pay annually and it's going to cost you less because you're getting a discount, and then it's this one-off payment annually, then it's just like a kind of a dunning process to get them to do it again next year. Because you know that it's not going to happen automatically. The subscriptions are not just going to renew and you're going to be able to reach into their bank and take some more money. You've got to get them to initiate the process, right? You've got to get them to go in and say, yeah, I do want to renew, so I'll click the button and make the payment. It's definitely a really easy flow, but you don't want to be doing that every 3, 4, 5 weeks. You probably, at best, you would only want to do it every few months. And as I said, I think annually is better. But then you're not paying those card fees on those higher amounts. So you don't, like, when you do that by card and that huge fee, well, I say huge, but you know, when you're looking at $20 being pulled out of your 500, it's like, and this would be, no, there would be no $20 out of every payment. It would be, you know, the $50 that you've paid a month per month to the service that I'm creating, and that would be it. So no matter how many payments you take, that's the fee that you've paid. So the effective sort of rate fee percentage that you pay, kind of the more you earn, the lower that gets. The more payments you have, the lower that gets. The thing about repeating payments in the UK is, and the EU, is kind of like it's direct debit. That's the thing that's in place for that. And there's been talk about setting up ways to initiate and approve direct debits using the open banking schemes. So that might be the solution to that ultimately. But direct debits are slightly different payment rails, and that does cost a little bit more. Poly is very cheap per transaction fee of 1%, maximum 3. Yeah, that kind of sounds very similar to direct debit. There's like caps on it, and service providers can only charge so much and whatever, which is all sort of regulated as well, which is nice. Yeah. There's one in the UK called Go Cardless. They've been doing that for a while, and it's very similar. But they're just doing it on top of direct debit. Direct debit at the moment in the UK, at least, you can't authorise it. Really, you can't authorise it automatically, electronically, because you have to get the customer to fill in their bank details manually, even if it's electronically, and kind of produce the direct debit form, which then has to be kept on record somewhere, and it's just like antiquated, even though direct debit is actually relatively new in the grand scheme of payments and banking. But it's still a bit behind the times. And I think what they're sort of moving towards is where you can just go, well, if this person can authenticate against this bank account, then we can prove that they have the authority to basically enable this direct debit authorization, which then allows a service provider to go and reach into the account and take out a variable amount. I think there's different types, so you can have fixed amount or variable amount, but whatever. So direct debit allows for both, and then that's where like the direct debit thing kind of sits under the open banking stuff. So it will come. I think there'll be this happy middle ground somewhere where actually taking payments from people will cost next to nothing for the most part, and you'll be able to do it on a regular schedule like you can with card payments that make sense, and that people don't have to keep reauthorizing every so often. And it'll be safe for the customer, whoever they are, obviously consumers, the people concerned about, but it'll be safe for the customer, businesses too, and then it'll be safe for the provider, the merchant, and the transactions will happen quickly. And I think that's like, those are the two core bits for me. It's like cheap and it's fast. Obviously the other concerns are like security is there too, but once it's got all of that in place, I think it will just naturally sort of fall into place. The only situation that it doesn't really make sense for is for credit purchases. So that's where card has been the king, because I can have an account with American Express or whatever, and I can have $10,000 credit line with them, and then I can go and spend that money easily just by giving my card details over to a service provider or whatever. And I don't think they'll change from that for credit for a while. Like the credit companies taking their credit accounts and making them available through this kind of open banking stuff is not going to happen. It is my gut feeling on that, because they're very much wedded to the card companies and that the whole ecosystem there. But yeah, it'll change. I think it'll just become a bit more of a mixed setup where you've got people can use card and they can use bank-to-bank payment, and the merchants will go, well, we prefer you to use a bank-to-bank payment because it's cheaper for us. Like, it costs us next to nothing. So please do that. And maybe pass on some of that saving to the consumer, so they're incentivized to use that method. And then they only use card when they really feel that they have to. Like, they can't do it through a bank, or because it's a credit account or something like that. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. I'm all for that future. Yeah, I agree. It is an outdated way of thinking, the way things are at the moment. And I think it will always be a little bit like that. Financial institutions, any kind of institution that's been around for a long time, is going to be behind the times and kind of holding back because of the cost of investing and changing, and the risk of like what happens if it all goes south or it doesn't work or whatever. Because they're such beasts and behemoths. But it will steadily change, like the white cliffs being eroded by the sea. That's interesting. I was in Japan, because we're like looking to go to Japan in a couple of months' time. We were looking at like ways of paying, and a lot of the stuff online says that cash is still the main way to pay, and they're sort of encouraging you to get loads of cash out, and I just like, that doesn't feel right to me somehow. I just like, in the back of my mind, I've got something saying, no, Japan's way further ahead than that. So yeah, I would love to be proven wrong in some respects, but I'm not going to get loads of cash out. I don't feel like I should be walking around with tons of, yen in my wallet. Anyway. Thanks, Essa. I don't think people want me to talk about this on a podcast. Okay, it's still cash based, but I mean, if there are other options, I'm gonna look for other options. Okay, that's good advice. I'll bear that in mind. I'm just gonna switch. I don't think I'm gonna do it. My brain's not in it for doing any more code at this point. Yeah, I should have done that a while ago. And also, really, I stop yakking because I've got a dry mouth and a sore throat now. But yeah, I mean, if you've got any input about Japan from your travels and learnings that you've made, it'd be great to hear about it. We should chat. Thanks for joining. I'm gonna wrap it up because I'd like to go and have a break now, I think. It was good to chat about some of these things. Obviously I enjoy it, but hopefully you enjoyed it as well. And I'll spend some time over the next few weeks thinking about what should sort of come next for Spread, and then we can work on that together. I'll pick some streams up in the new year, I think, on it. Have a good, gosh, yeah, you definitely need to go. Have a good weekend. and I'll catch you, I don't know when, but see you soon.